So, Michael, when you got a designer who is, they're slaving over this wonderful piece of beauty they're creating, and of course they're doing it on the computer. And of course there are the colors on the computer, and there's the colors from when that piece actually gets printed, and the concern is always how much different will they be or not. I know you're going to share some information about a standard that's supposed to make that as close as possible. Why don't you fill us in about that?
So yeah, in the late 1960s, early 1970s, when a lot more printing of publications was going on, they realized that they had some issues of standardization. There was no real standard. So originally they created SWAP. And I have listed here what that stands for. But basically what they did is they have this general target that, everybody that's in the printing industry or people that are buying print can agree upon, so that hopefully when you're designing on your computer and your ICC swap profile on there is going to render an image on the computer that is similar to what you would see in nature with those CMYK or RGB values. RGB being on the computer and CMYK for print. So these standards have been created to make sure that everybody can agree upon a basic standard. That way, if somebody designs something and you go to print it and they say, well, this doesn't look like how it should, it kind of protects the printer where they could then say, well, we print to this standard, our machines are calibrated, and based on the values you have for the cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, which is the CMYK, this is how, this Gracol 7 standard is telling us how to print, or the swap. So, in 1974 is when they first made SWAP, SWOP, and that has morphed into what we call today G7. Basically, it's when you're printing cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, those come together and you're trying to print a gray. You want that gray to look a solid gray, as if you were just printing like 50% black. If you would then have a breakdown of like 30, 30, 30, 30, or 30, 30, 30 for cyan, magenta, and yellow, or something around there. So when you have your press set so that a combination of cyan, magenta, and yellow printed together shows up as a gray that matches perfectly to a gray, and it doesn't look like a gray like when you were a kid and mixing a bunch of colors together that potentially turns like a little brownish or gets a little red or gets a little blue or a little bit too yellow, that gray looks indeed like a black. So the whole reason for that is that's a start point that from everything else that's printed, it can look the best that it's going to look, and you're going to have as much contrast as you're hoping for, and the colors are going to pop, and everything's going to look great. And once you have that set standard, everything looks better from there. And we've noticed it on our presses. Once you get the G7 standard and you have a specialist come in and help you with that, everything starts to look better, and in the gray areas, and it helps also with all the rest of the colors, especially with white papers now are a lot whiter than they used to be through different manufacturing processes. So if your gray standard in this swap is right where it should be, and your Gracol standard's right, you then have a bigger color gamut, and a color gamut would be the amount of reachable colors you can achieve just using cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, which is what most printers are using. I mean, there's also spot colors. We could talk about this all day. There's also spot colors, though, that can get you a further gamut to have more colors, because the colors we're seeing here in real life, infinite, millions and millions and millions. Not all of those can be reached perfectly using just 4 colors, but using a Gracol standard like this is going to help you get closer to the colors that you're hoping to, that your eye is going to see in nature. On top of that here, all of our lights here at Foote Printing are also set to mimic sunlight. So that also helps when you're looking at a sheet, that it looks right. and helps for a myriad of other reasons. We could do a whole nother video on that. But we use those to swap. We have our profiles set for our computers, ICC profiles, so that what we're seeing matches what we're printing digitally, matches what we're printing offset, and looks hopefully like what you're seeing on your screen, and everybody can be happy and no issues occur just because of color variance.
And that's what a good printer, I think, does. They bring happiness. I mean, good design can bring happiness to the world, but really, you know,
Yeah.
and I think all the things you mentioned is just, it's another reminder of why it's really important if you're a designer, you know, to be working with a good printer. And if you have questions about anything, just go back and forth, because there are so many considerations. You know, you've mentioned just a few of them here of getting that color onto that paper, whatever kind of paper that is, and whatever light it's going to be seen in. So thanks for sharing that, Michael. That's pretty interesting. And again, if you want to see some more videos like this, you can always do so at footeprinting.com, Foote with an E, printing.com, where Michael has all sorts of great information that can help you out as a designer, and, you know, just getting things printed and making sure it's as beautiful as possible. So be sure to check them out.